you listening?
Welcome, folks, to the Craic'n Coachin podcast. We've got a new one today.
Oh,
For anyone that's listening, we have a new tonic. Let's hear it.
New
Does
tonic?
It does it sound as good as the Monster? What am I saying, Emmett? Out of 10? Was it okay?
it was good. That it was good. Flavor. What flavor we working with?
Strawberry lemonade? I don't know how I feel about this one. It was a last minute grab from the shop on the way here.
You're gonna feel ultra focused. What is the ingredient in that new tonic?
Oh, James's pubes. James's spit.
Chris Williams and James Smith's.
Oh, Chris Williams' tears. Oh, yeah. Very good. That's what the saltiness is coming from. I have to say, actually, the taste of it's good. Do you mean the main ingredient for, like...
Yeah, isn't it supposed to be an alert focus, like cognition sort of drink?
Yeah, it seems to be based around, like, nootropics, sorry. So, it's 120 milligram of natural caffeine. Zero sugar, of course, sports medal performance. Researched, backed, nootropic ingredients. Seems to be a lot of like green tea extracts and L-theanine and all the good stuff, you know. B6 in there, fuck. Don't be telling James Mack. He'd be all over that stuff. Oh, here. There's a prescript seminar in London. We were talking about this the other day, actually, weren't we? Not on the podcast, but just on our
You're
chat.
considering going?
Yeah, nah, I'm not going anymore. I just dropped
Neither.
some pennies on a different educational resource. So, you know, I think with the prescript stuff, it would be nice to go see everybody,
Yeah.
you know. But I've seen them before, so I'm just being a fanboy at that point, aren't I? And we've had them on the podcast, you know. Can't be greedy. Can't have them more than once a year. So,
What
as well
educational
as-
resource did you opt for instead?
like a coaching mentorship alongside Trifecta. So I gonna delve into that. James McCaughey, seems quite good. Seems very good.
Lovely.
You can bring I think there's only like 6 or 8 coaches to be in the vicinity at a time. You get an in-person sort of case study every 2 weeks, and it lasts for 12 weeks. So I'm actually excited for it. You can sort of bring in your own issues that you're having with clients, etc., and we'll talk through them, explain how it actually works. And I think we're talking about all the modalities of just like the body's movement, biomechanics, a bit of physio work and stuff like that. So programming, I'm actually really excited for it, especially because you know yourself, you don't really get that many opportunities to do a bit of like in-person education.
100%. That'll be great. Sounds good. Like
But
another cap to the feather.
not cap to the feather. Do you say that backwards on purpose?
Another feather to the cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I did it on purpose.
Right, getting into today's topic. So, managing your surplus without burying your progress. So the whole idea is that, you know, everyone is going to be getting into their winter arc, or like yourself, maybe they're just in a long gaining phase, and we're going to sort of lay out exactly how to do that in the most efficient way possible without fucking it up, because, well, both of us, I think, have been in some dodgy gaining phases before, and maybe have not handled them too well. Same again, even with clients, etc. So we'll be giving you some education on this, some horror stories, and yeah, hopefully by the end of it, you can manage your gaining phase perfectly well.
I think, mate, we've all done the permabulk at some stage or another, haven't we? If we've been in this long enough and made the mistakes, and that's how you learn to actually execute it properly.
I think it's a necessary evil, interestingly enough. but we'll get into that. So, I think, well, you've sort of let me take a lead on this one, so I've wrote out some notes as we did last time. You know, we're being a lot more professional these days. We're not going to bullshit people. You know, we've got a nice wee list to go through here. But first of all, we're probably diving into the expectations and mindset behind the bulk. So, what is the surplus actually for? And I think this can be skewed very easy because a lot of people do want to just get bigger, but they don't really understand what bigger means. And I think sometimes it means different things to different people. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the expectations, or I mean, the purpose of a gaining phase is to accrue muscle tissue. That's the long and short of it. The food, the surplus of calories, is there to facilitate your training performance and your recovery. That is its main purpose. Now, people getting bigger, maybe they want to see scale weight go up. Is that maybe the first thing or the first problem maybe you come across when they're chasing scales?
Yeah, I think the scales are on both ends are just, they can be demonized very easily, can't they? Like, it can be so easy just to be chasing the scales on either end. Whenever, you know, sometimes doing that, in doing that there, you actually end up in a position where you just end up losing, or you end up losing muscle in the deficit, or you end up gaining too much fat in the surplus. And whenever we have too much fat, it is going to be a hindrance to a certain extent, like with many things, leading to like poor sleep, poor digestion, more sort of load on the joints, or hormones will actually be a wee bit out of place as well. And then in terms of that, they're probably with being a bit heavier and fatter, cardiovascular system's taking a big hit, causing more fatigue on the body. You know, there's just domino effect of having more fat doesn't always equal better. Yes, you probably feel quite strong and you're moving things well in the gym, but whenever you're walking up the stairs and you're out of breath, it's probably not great. It's not great, folks. So chasing the scale is probably not what we want to do. So the actual, you know, mechanism behind the surplus, and I think we'll all agree with this, is just gain muscle. Simple.
And rather than scale dictating decision making process, the main thing that I would be using as the metric is your training performance, because training is what builds the muscle. That's where you're getting the stimulus. That's the match that lights a fire. So
That's what we're looking
you
for
training.
over, isn't it? Like I think a lot of people forget that. Is that
Yeah, your training should be improving. You should be getting stronger over time, as you add muscle, and you allow that to dictate your process a bit more. I think that's making that shift personally is where I've seen more of a positive sort of successful productive gaining phase, as opposed to getting too bogged down with scale weight or just running things into the ground, to the point where it's no longer productive, but like maybe being a bit stubborn and continuing to push through anyway.
It does. It just leads to, well, I think one of the terms that is probably going to be used quite often to this is like the surplus tax is fat. You know, the more we gain, the more tax we gain, and the more we're going to have to pay it back in the long run, which is shit. Everyone hates paying tax, but sometimes again it's necessary to gain more in the long run.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I was going
I
to say
definitely,
that. I mean, yeah, just to
go
cut
ahead.
in there, like some level of fat gain is inevitable. It's not like a gaining phase gone wrong. You haven't fucked it up if you're not maintaining like peak leanness. That can hold someone back as well, where they try and stay really lean throughout their entire gaining phase, in fear of adding on a bit of fat. At the end of the day, you said yourself perfectly, it's a fat tax. You can pay it back. You have to pay it back, but you can pay it back. It's just a case of putting yourself into deficit, and if you do that properly, you can strip away the fat and all the muscle that you've built over the hopefully long months of gaining will stay with you.
I think people do also get that wee bit of a fear, not to jump ahead too much, but the fear of like getting too fat, because maybe let's say that you're a beginner and you've had to do your first cut. Your first cut is always the hardest. It really is. Like, um, it could be the wrong approach. It could just be the fact that you don't have as much muscle and you're having to push a wee bit harder. But if you actually do sustain a gaining period for long enough, gain a strong amount of muscle, and then whenever you come around to cut again, well, one, you're probably going to be cutting on more calories because your body has more to output due to muscle mass being higher, performance being higher. And two, you're not going to have to actually get as lean or as light, let's say, because a lot of people do always correspond that cut with a certain scale weight. So for example, like my first ever cut that I did was for a photo shoot. I got down to 65 kilo. I cut 3 years after this, and I only had to cut to 75.
So
Or
did you
no,
spend the
72.
majority?
72, sorry, 72.
And did you spend the majority of the 3 years in a surplus?
Yes, an aggressive one, a very aggressive surplus.
Yeah, so probably maybe you would say not really productive. Maybe in terms of it all going towards muscle building, but lessons learned. But like you don't have to do 3 years, but you can definitely spend. You can almost spend up 12 months if you do it right. In a surplus with sort of we can maybe speak about as well, but periods of resensitization or pulling back slightly to just improve appetite, improve any issues maybe that are cropping up, or any some sort of diet fatigue, because it can get taxing and putting away a lot of food for a long period of time. I think the idea of it is like, oh, it's so great, you get to eat 4,000 calories a day, but that doing that for long enough, you're not so excited to eat the food.
Especially if you're like a productive person like me and you, where you have to actually use your brain for a bit of work. Like, people don't talk about the fact that consuming that amount of calories every day does put another strain on the body. Like the amount of times that I've been in a pretty high surplus and had to go for like midday naps and all after food, I'm like, fuck me, it's rough. Like, it really is. And I never thought that I would be on that side of it. I always thought it would, like, cutting would be easier, or no, not easier, but cutting would be harder. But I don't believe that at all. Like, I stand on the side of the fence that, a well planned out and followed, like, accurately surplus is going to be much harder than any deficit. I always like the idea that inaction is much easier than action. Like, it's easier to not eat a meal or eat less than it is to force feed yourself a final meal.
100%.
So, what should we be looking at whenever it comes to the payoff of muscle gain versus fat gain? Of course, the big thing that we're going to have to lay out instantly is that, we're talking from a natural aspect. I'm sure there's all sorts of fucking Chinese chemicals you could put in your body to grow like the Hulk, where you go from a wee fat Bruce Banner to an absolutely shredded and 0% body fat fucking Hulk. But we're not talking from that. We're talking about pure chicken and rice diet, lifting heavy weights, stimulating the muscle, having the right amount of fucking input versus output, getting your sleep in, your recovery, all the good fucking stuff. So, realistically, from a beginner's sort of aspect, if you're quite dialed in and like you're only really starting this here, you're probably looking at like a 1-to-1 ratio. For every kilo of body fat, or for every kilo of muscle you put on, you're probably putting on a kilo of body fat. It could be even more, just depending. But let's say that that's an accurate sort of measurement. It could be off. As we do go from beginner to intermediate to advanced, this ratio worsens more towards fat than muscle. So for a kilo of muscle put on, you're maybe having to push a bit more aggressively to go for that 1 to 2. So 2 kilos of fat being put on, even up to the point where you might even need to start putting on nearly 4 kilos of fat to actually gain a kilo of muscle, because it does just get harder and harder, because of course our ceiling just isn't as high with things that we can actually do, and our toolbox isn't as deep anymore. You're just having to really just focus on consistency over time. Anything I've said there that you'd disagree with, or?
No, not necessarily. I think you do see it in practice when you do more gaining phases. You don't need to put on as much weight, or you find yourself not getting as heavy. The rate of gain slows down considerably. Like, personally speaking, mine is pretty slow at the minute. I mean, 37, 38 weeks I've been in a sustained gaining phase for.
Mm-hmm.
And at the minute, like, it's almost, we're happy enough body weight staying relatively stable, relatively steady. Seeing maybe not even 0.2 kilos per week for us is a decent rate of gain for where I'm currently at. Um, so yeah, I think the longer you are in it, and especially naturally, you probably do see that rate of gain slowing down. But that's maybe why your first time gaining, you naturally do see getting maybe things carried away a little bit, because I suppose the ceiling, the potential to put on more weight is higher.
Yeah, easy. Again, it isn't going to be fixed either. It just depends on how hard you want to push the surplus, doesn't it? And for you, you clearly see the benefit of playing the long game and not just diving into a really aggressive off season, and that's
Yeah,
that's completely acceptable. You're also not taking into account like all the shit that's like what most people don't take into account, all the things that are going to occur on the back of having to eat so much food as well. It's great jumping into a really aggressive off season, but trying to find time to eat 4 to 5 thousand calories a day is fucking rough.
yeah. I mean, that's probably the main thing, or the main bottleneck I would find. You have to be so on the ball with your routine and your meal timings, because once that gets away from you, once you miss a meal and you're cramming back to back meals in, full transparency, lately it's happened to me a couple of times, and that's when you have to be careful, because that's when appetite can start to dip off, and it can be hard to get that back, even 1 or 2 days of that. And you can maybe find yourself chasing your tail, your appetite falls off a cliff, and suddenly your digestion isn't as good. It's harder to sustain the surplus, and you're wondering, where did it all go wrong? Food hasn't increased. Your body weight hasn't maybe jumped up that much, but you're starting to hit a brick wall, and it's usually that I find the meal timings um don't get respected enough,
Yeah,
and
because
you're
it does.
cramming food.
It's a domino effect, isn't it, on the back end? Like, digestion ends up fucked. Especially if you're going to bed that night, digestion's fucked, sleep's off. Next morning, intuition's out the window. You end up in that, like, just that consistent circle of just like, okay, well, if intuition's off, you don't really have that ability to follow the plan as well. Your mean timing ends up fucked up again. It just finishes up like a surplus very easily, and I would say if you fuck it up well enough, you could probably like see yourself in the next 10 to 14 days having to actually stop that gaining phase, unless you have some way of like actually coming in. And I think this is where a coach comes in really handy, because if you're completely honest with your coach, they will know that, okay, well, we clearly need to sort of pull back a tiny bit to actually fall back into that, sorry, that lineup of perfect food time. And it isn't a case of actually just force feeding, like, okay, coming in until tomorrow, we'll miss our first 2 meals. We'll get you back to being hungry again. And then whenever it comes to, let's say you eat every 3 hours, let's say you wake up at 9 a.m. We miss our 9 a.m. meal, we miss our 12 meal, and then when it comes to 3 p.m., you just fall back into your normal meals again. And then that means that, well, one, your digestive tract's going to be in a position where it's probably, not, for better use of words, cleared out, quote unquote, and it's sort of ready to take on food again. It's not causing any issues or problems. You're hungry for it as well, so then it just falls back into line very easily, and you're not experiencing all those issues, because I think anybody that knows what they're talking about when it comes to food will understand that the digestive system is everything. If digestion's on track, then everything's on track.
I think digestion will usually stop a gaining phase before excess body fat will. Pretty confident in saying that, like 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Of course, not always, but digestion can be the limiter. Like high volume of food, as it was sort of alluded to with the meal timings and having back to back meals, can be an issue, but then food quality can be another one. where you want to make sure that you're maintaining high food quality. Once you start like plugging in lower quality options all across your day, that's when digestion can become an issue. Maybe like highly processed foods, also
I
like
think
foods with maybe high amounts of fat in them as well, take longer to digest. Um, and maybe just aren't sitting well with you. That can upset things too.
I think this is where those rules start to go out the window a wee bit more. Do you know, whenever you hear like coaches talk about like the, I don't know, pick a random number out of 100, the 80-20 rule, the 75-25 rule, the 50-50 rule. It's like, it's, well, when it comes to like pushing into a hard surplus, you're probably talking, if you do give it a rule at all, the 90-10 rule, the 95-5 rule, you know, where you could probably get away with something a wee bit ultra processed like that 10% of the time, but I guarantee you when it comes to that next meal, it's going to be fucking very hard to get it in. And that's when we start talking about like GI, talk about FODMAP, things that don't upset the stomach at all. So can we get, our plain white foods that are going to just digest, go through the tract very easily? And for anybody that is in a surplus right now, like, look into FODMAP foods. Look into like different types of like GI foods, things that digest faster, things that don't leave a residue, things that our body just accepts and processes quite quickly. Don't be going over the top of them, because we do still need like a certain amount of fiber and stuff in our diet, etc. But I would say, for most carbohydrate sources, you're probably looking at something that is low in the FODMAP, something that digests very easy. Your white rices, what else? Usually stay away from like overly processed breads and stuff like that. I think people do that there quite often. They're firing in fucking 14 bagels and they're like, my stomach's sore. I'm like, no wonder, kiddo.
Yeah, like people, what you just said there in terms of like, I agree 100%. Like a 90-10 rule is probably ideal, and some people will get it the wrong way around, thinking food's higher, I have more room to have stuff that are maybe less nutrient dense. They're just going to help me get the calories in, but then that becomes an issue when you can no longer get the next meal in because you haven't digested that food properly. Because whatever food you've eaten, if it's shit quality, you can't digest it. You can't eat sooner. Like ultimately, it comes down to being able to eat frequently enough as possible. Spread your meals out across the day, and do that for as long as you possibly can. Once that becomes an issue, that's where I think the bottleneck is.
This is a pretty big niche shootout, just because I do remember specifically seeing this on someone's story before, and it really had a light bulb moment for me as a coach and an athlete. It was wee Matt Kovac. Don't know if you ever heard of him, but he competed the year after me and Finn. He's one of Finn Kelly's clients, but I remember him putting on a story and it was something along the lines of, in a gaining phase, you need to be as hungry as possible. So
Yeah,
that's a big one as well. Like, if the hungrier you can stay in a gaining phase, if you can stay hungry in between every single meal, the better the gaining phase is going to go.
yeah. Like trying to keep your appetite in a good spot is definitely a challenge as well. Like I, it will dip at some point. Like you have to accept at some point as well. As much as in an ideal scenario, you're hungry, you're looking forward to your meals, there will come a point in time you sustain a surplus for long enough. If your goal is to build a lot of tissue, you should spend a decent amount of a chunk of your time in a gaining phase. If your goal is physique development, more time needs to be spent in this phase because that's where the muscle's being built. There will reach a point in time though where the appetite will dip off, and you just have to accept that you'll be eating at times when you're not hungry. I think like people are maybe they have a skewed perception on this,
A
but
wee bit soft.
yeah, like if you're not hungry and you have meals to get in, you just in some case it comes to a point where you just have to get it done. Um, and like procrastinating on getting the meals in, maybe if you're not hungry, and then you push it back an hour, you push it back 2 hours, then you're behind on meals, and then it's like almost like a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about there. It was just, you end up fucking it up somehow. and that's it. It's trying to stay as consistent as possible. But to sort of finish up that sort of section of the sort of surplus, like the expectations and the mindset. You know, some people's mindset are actually skewed towards the other end of it altogether, where, you know, they're not seeing it as the free for all. They're not being like, oh, fucking happy days, I can eat as much as possible. Some people are actually on the point of being like, maybe I would rather stay lean. And like, is it a legitimate strategy, or is it just a comfort blanket? The lean bulk, like, is there still gains to be made in the lean bulk and the phase, quote unquote? Yeah, it's a maintenance, really. It's a slight surplus. Definitely some gains to be made there. I'm not going to sit here and like bullshit on it, but it just isn't as effective for natural athletes, because, you know, we just don't get the benefits of having all these tools at our disposal, and we want to make the most out of every single phase. You know, you need to be aggressive on all fronts. So that means that when it comes to a bulk, you know, usually you have a time period on it. For you, you know, you're taking, technically right now, like, let's say if we treated Emmett's photo shoot there like his first show, you know, he's taking a 2 year off season technically.
Nah,
Was your
that's
photo
still
shoot in
under.
2024?
That's 10. No, it was 10 months ago. So
And by the
10
time you
months
compete
is
again,
that will be it will be 2027. So
so
it'll be early
2 years.
next year, maybe.
We'll just say 2 years.
Yeah, we'll round it up.
Oh,
We'll round up the two if you want.
okay. So like
Um,
almost like a 2 year off season. So you've actually knocked me off progress here. Oh,
nah, go for it.
the idea that you only have 2 years to gain as much muscle mass as possible before you do reveal the product again. You know, you would want to make the most out of that there. You don't want to be sitting there going, oh, I'm just going to take this really like slow approach. And right now, like, you're talking about your scale weight being very slow, which is fine, but you're also in like a very heavy surplus, and people don't really talk about what is happening right now for your body. You know, like, yes, the scale weight isn't moving, but you also are giving your body more than enough fuel to make loads and loads of progress. And it's not like the progression isn't still happening. It'd be different if you were maybe you were only adding 0.1 kilo on, and you were still the same weight you were at the photo shoot. Do you know what I mean? And you weren't making any progress, you weren't seeing any sort of gains, and like, you were so obsessed with the abs still being there. The thing is, like, the goal is to get the abs to disappear. Maybe not as fast as possible, but, you know, you want them gone. You want to know that there's a good layer there. The hibernation started, and the body is given a reason to actually put on some fucking muscle mass. You know, our body has never ever wanted to hold large amounts of muscle mass, and this is why we are looking at, you know, pushing that bulk a bit aggressively, mainly because whenever we do go into a deficit, our body instantly sees muscle as not a very energy efficient way of keeping the body, you know, alive. So it just gets rid of things like that very fast. Whenever we give it a bigger surplus, whenever we give it more access to fuel, it'll more than likely keep that muscle on. Yes, it comes with the back end of having a bit more body fat, but more than worth it whenever it comes to actually revealing that again. Whether you are going to be, you know, I would say that this is something that's very common in bodybuilding, very easily understood. Outside of that, there, like, other athletes across the world, you know, I think that some other sports are so active that they never ever get to go into a good gaining phase, and I think it's something that is so overlooked and would be beneficial for a lot of people.
I think I don't think you need a massive surplus, like, at all. To be honest, like, I think a slight surplus, for a long period of time is going to be, in my opinion, the best approach. Just simply because it's going to allow you to sustain it for a bit longer. Like, there's only so much muscle you can put on. That's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's kind of where I'm coming from, is maybe just sounding very aggressive towards it, but more about, you know, trying to utilize the time you have. Like, 2 years isn't much time at all, especially whenever you still win everything that happens. You know, you technically, how long were you away there?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Let's say that, you know, on the back end out there, you've lost a couple of days either end, lost. where's 2.5 weeks gone? How many times has that happened throughout the space of 2 years? Maybe you've lost, like, say you had 24 months. Realistically, maybe you've only actually had 18 months that were actually really productive because of things that go on in your life. Outside of fucking everything else that happens, injuries, family events, fucking you name
Yeah.
it.
I think like personally, I've been lucky this time round in that I've been able to sustain it fairly seamlessly the entire time.
Touch wood.
Yeah, like, and I mean, I've like 8 weeks more, 8 weeks left of pushing up. So until I do a pre-prep, and just almost like a diet phase, and that'll help wash off some diet fatigue. That'll help freshen me up. That'll help pull off some body weight, but
Get you hungry.
get me hungry again. Yeah, I'm definitely not. I'm not super hungry at the minute at all. If I'm being honest, like, I'm not excited to eat my meals. I don't think. I mean, there's definitely a case to be made. It's a good thing that I'd be looking forward to your meals and your food, which I was for the definitely the first half of the surplus. But I'm accepting it, and where I'm at the moment, I'm just not so excited for food. But I know it's just like there to fuel. It's there to fuel the training and the recovery, so that they continue to show up and perform in the gym. Like, you almost have to zoom out a bit and look with a longer perspective, and you have to have a serious amount of delayed gratification as well, because you're not seeing those, nice changes and stuff week to week in terms of like visuals and body weight, and yeah, you have to be willing to play the long game.
Like, you're clearly someone's walking the walk right now, so you have belief in every single word you're saying and also the process that you're carrying out, but this isn't your first gaining phase either, is it?
No, it
So,
is. Yeah, I've done a couple. I mean, maybe fourth, if we could call that. I mean, it's sometimes you're like, some of them aren't really structured enough to even name gaining phases.
the
Um,
puberty one that everyone goes through as well, where you just end up eating loads and loads of foods, not a gaining phase, mate. You're actually just like a human being. Um, what I was going to say is that going into your first gaining phase, did you have any sort of pullbacks? Were you a bit nervous about it? Did you not know? Because I think that's probably the biggest issue with most beginners is like you don't really know what you're going to get from this here, and you're just being told. But I've cut and I've bulked, so I know what they expect from them. I know what I'm going to get from them, and I know
yeah,
why they're worth it. Whereas
yeah,
it's sort of like investing in something for the first time. It's like you don't really know what's going to be on the back end of this here. Am I just getting fat for the fact of getting fat and going to look exactly the same?
100%. And you don't know until you know. Like, you have to experience it first. So like, I suppose what you see there is all you know. You can't foresee anything else. You just have to almost trust the process. If you have a coach, trust your coach. Definitely can resonate with the fact that maybe the first time that I properly got lean and then pushed up after that, I was so like, I was so attached to the abs and the leanness that I didn't want to let it go. And seeing that go was definitely a bit more upsetting. Not upsetting, but like, it's like,
Like a
it's like,
like a
fuck's
family
sake.
member gone.
Yeah, fuck's sake, I'd say, yeah, it's like, I've lost it now. But then once the beauty of it is, once you've got yourself in that position and proven to yourself you can execute a fat loss phase, you can always get lean again.
Mm-hmm.
But building the tissue, and spending the time doing what's required in a surplus, ideally building the tissue is what's difficult. It's actually what's going to change your physique, because getting lean isn't, you're not changing your physique really. You're just you're just showcasing what muscle you really have. I think, was it Finn put it really well in the story the other day. If you haven't got any, like, if you haven't got any muscle, like, being lean is how tight your skin is to muscle. It's your skin can't be tight to something that's not there. That's true as well. So like, spend the time building the muscle first is certainly very important. It's in your best interest if you want to sustain a physique that's impressive long term. Don't be just dieting every 6 to 8 weeks. You're never going to change properly enough have a physique that's gonna last really.
Yeah. Clearly, on this topic as well, it just depending on what way you've went about it. You know, I am a lot bigger than like me. Not a lot bigger. Sorry, a lot taller. I was going to say there, but that's just mean. What I'm actually trying to say is our body compositions and the way we're built are completely different. So you know what you see as a effective gaining phase, you know, I would maybe think is a bit of a like a slow approach because I know that I stay quite lean all year round, and I also know that my body just takes quite a lot of calories to actually see a large surplus and a good bit of body fat actually going on. And I know that's more
Yeah,
environmental as well because of how active and stuff I am, and I would say I'm fucking highly stressed and the heart rate's high often enough, so I think I sit burning more calories than most people do just doing normal tasks. Um, but in the long run, you know, everyone has a different approach and everyone has different ways of going about it. But I was going to ask you, like, what are your 3 signs that the surplus is done? If you had to pick them.
appetite
Yep.
has gone. Training performance starts to decline.
Yep. I always heard this third one, and I'm not too sure about it. But there is no remainder of abs at all. Do you believe that you should be able to still see abs?
I mean, if I look
Like
close enough in the
you should
right
still
lighting,
see.
there's abs there.
So
But I'm
this
not
was
going to
an
say I have
interesting one,
abs.
but you can still see some sort of outline of the midsection. Like you're not running about with a dad bod.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
So
would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I think it's a nice wee one just to sort of go off of, but of course it's not completely accurate because everyone's built different. Hence why I sort of brought that topic up before. You know, me being fat versus someone else being fat. Like I actually have abs all year round, even at 105 kilo. There was still like a residue of like my abdominals sitting there, and I was like, oh, because I used that rule, and I was like, I can still keep going. But I would also like the phase I'm in right now in terms of like where I'm at with wanting to carry out a wee bit of athleticism and also fighting. You know, the thing I'm struggling with the most right now is that I still need to like maintain my body weight where it's at right now to be ready to be like actively fighting. But
Yeah.
the thing I'm struggling with right now the most is that I don't feel like I can give myself enough food to actually recover from a lot of the work I'm doing, and it actually gets me excited because I'm really, really excited for the potential of what I can bring to my next gaming phase, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. Like, I don't know if that gaming phase is going to be very bodybuilding orientated, but there definitely will be like the priority of some hypertrophy there, some strength work, and some athleticism. Like, I really am. I really have it in my head that I'm going to go full like Tom Holland, if you know who he is.
Should I
Don't know
know
who
who he
Tom.
is?
Yes, all day long. This is my plan. This is my big plan. Relatively, I have it sort of in my head for like 2028 maybe. But I
Oh,
am just
mate,
gonna go.
sorry to jump in. You've showed me him. This is the guy that
Yes.
trains in the wilderness almost.
Yeah, this is sort of my aspect of life. Like, I just want to get really big and really strong. And once I sort of clear up this wee side quest right now of wanting to be active in Muay Thai, this is where I'm going. I want to be fucking. I want to get big and perform at a stupid level in terms of like strength and overall athleticism and just hypertrophy as well. I just want to get strong. I don't think in my later years of training have I had a block of just like getting strong, like really, really strong.
And is the idea for you getting strong, does that excite you more than the idea of adding some muscle?
Well, Emmett, here's the here's the thing. You know, it does also gain muscle as well. Like, it doesn't mean that we're not going to gain any muscle. The idea of, and I think you'll like this one. It's not about getting strong. It's about the idea of performance. Gets me excited.
Yeah. Getting better.
Yeah,
Um,
just
in
doing
terms
something
of
I haven't done before.
yeah, yeah. And I think like with that as well, just a little carry on. Like there is a correlation between building muscle and getting stronger. Like you will see your strength come up as you build muscle tissue. Maybe like with bodybuilding, it's not going to be large degrees of strength in terms of increase in load across all your lifts every week, but there should be a trend upwards regardless.
Yeah, it's the same with like the surplus. I think people just get these things wrong altogether. They get it backwards. You know, people relate strength as a sign of building muscle, but the reality is that you stimulating muscle and growing muscle is actually what gives you more strength and more increase, more progress. Same again for surplus. It's like the scale weight doesn't dictate that you're gaining more muscle. Gaining more muscle dictates you're gaining more muscle, and if you see that increase on the scale, excellent. It's a nice bit of data to have. You know, it's just it's the same as, you know, people going out of their way to chase a pump in the gym. It's like, again, it's just like sensation and pump or the byproduct of you correctly performing an exercise. It isn't the be all and end all. So, you know, stop chasing byproducts. You know, stop purposely chasing the strength. Stop purposely chasing the scale weight. Stop purposely chasing the pump.
Amen. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So what should you be chasing? Does this come back to the training performance? You should be seeing you just keep your training in a productive spot for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, from a purely bodybuilding standpoint, you know, we look at, of course, our reps, our load. So our volume, our load, both of those increasing, and then the third one that people don't really talk about too much, that I always say, is our skill. You know, our form. Things getting better in terms of our ability to execute an exercise and do it well.
Yeah. And should we talk about how to set up a gaining phase, or how to approach your gaining phase with regards to actual setup of your nutrition?
Yeah, let's definitely dive into that. In terms of Jesus Christ, this is quite interesting, right? Because me and Finn were talking about this the other day. This is a tiny bit different than our actual calories, but just to sort of mark this one off as well, because a lot of people follow this like old model, like the Lil McDonald's model of like the standard references of what you should be gaining as a natural meal per year, and some people still follow it like to a T. I actually heard someone quote it the other day on a reel, and I was just like blown away by it. So in year one, apparently on average people gain 9 to 11 kilos, so 20 to 25 pounds of muscle mass. I don't think this is very accurate at all. I think you would be blessed. You would be, I mean, you know you're going to the Olympia to gain 11 kilo of muscle in year one. Like, you
I
know,
don't think
you're
it's
that
ever
guy.
happened. I think I might have missed that year, but you'd be doing very
I
well.
think
Yeah.
I think I skipped the year 4 where you're gaining like 1 to 1.5 per year. Maybe we were
Yeah,
just too
unfortunately.
mature. We missed that one. But yeah, like these models are just outdated. You know, they're. I think a lot of people need to realize as well. Like again, this is outside the scope of the topic we're talking about right now. But like
So
whenever we
yeah. So do you
see these
think?
things,
Do you
go ahead, sir.
think? Sorry. Do you think that largely? I believe that the rate of gain again is like a. It can be useful and it can help you just to give you a data point to see what's happening. But it's again the same with the other stuff you were mentioning. It's not the be all end all.
Yeah. So this
So
is
like I'm
exactly what
not
I'm.
gonna. Yeah. So you're not swearing by an exact rate of gain. You're going off the individual in front of you, and like nuance with regards to body weight, training, and how well you're recovering from the training.
Yeah. But my big point to that, just to sort of use as a reference, was that a lot of people do go out of their way to try and find a reference point in terms of what they should be gaining. per year or whatever it is. And then same again when it comes to a surplus, using these like calorie calculators, etc., of what you should actually be eating. Okay, let's remember that these are all reference points. Let's remember that all these studies are done on like different types of populations, and a lot of them aren't actually fixed. Some of them are actually, they remind themselves they're uni students trying to get through uni, so they'll just skew the data to try and make it look one way or the other so that they can actually, pass their uni degree, or it's the way around. Maybe someone's associated themselves with a certain supplement and they're trying to, show the evidence to back this. So a lot of things are outdated, a lot of things are going to be skewed in terms of the population, and it also isn't always on trained individuals. But my big point here is that you need to go off the back of the results that you're actually getting, and not off of like these research papers. You need to see what's actually working for you. So there is, and this is the shit thing to say to people, because again, I hate this answer, but it depends. It depends on you as a person.
Does,
it
but
depends on.
There's no exact. Yeah, there's no. You have to fuck around and find out, pretty much.
Yeah, literally. And what we're looking for, again, like you say there, we're looking for a byproduct off the back of this here. So we're gonna find out what our maintenance calories are. How do we find out what our maintenance calories are? Well, simple enough. We go and train every day and do what we do every single day, and we eat a certain amount of food, and our weight probably doesn't move. Very little. Let's say we give ourselves a wee bracket, maybe fluctuations of around 3 to 4 kilo, depending on how big of a person you are. Happy enough to say that limit? Yeah. So say you're sort of knocking in between that 3 and 4 kilo marker. Maybe 4 is a wee bit too much. On a day-to-day, and you're taking your scale weight every single day, it's giving you the same average over and over again. You're sort of staying within that. Okay, great, you found your maintenance. Now what do? Easy. Increase the calories. So depending on where you're increasing the calories and what set point you're at, this is going to depend on, well, like what type of person you are as well, what way you function as a person, and like there are 100 ways to, like, not at 100, but there's a couple of ways to do this here, in the sense of actually increasing calories depending on where you're at with things, and also what way you've actually set your calories up in the first place. I think me and you'll agree instantly that increasing your protein is probably not something you want to do.
No, I think for me, like as a general rule of thumb, protein will stay pretty stable. Fats will stay relatively stable, and the sliding scale will be your carbohydrates that, depending on your phase, will move up and down. So like essentially pretty much all of the changes that have happened with my nutrition throughout this gaining phase have been through an increase in carbohydrates. So if body weight has stalled for say 2 weeks, or training performance isn't moving, we'll maybe add 50 grams of carbs in. Not an exact figure, but that might be a protocol that is used. Then we see how body weight trends, we see how training performance trends. If the body weight starts to climb up, if training performance starts to improve, sweet spot will stay there for a bit. And that's the approach that I like for myself. That's the approach that I like to take with clients as well. Carbohydrates, ideally, are increasing. Of course, there's only there is a limit for certain people, as well as the amount of carbs you can get in, or some people have a preference towards maybe going slightly higher in fats. But and also people make the argument that you need X amount of fats, you need more fats for hormonal health, but you don't actually need that much.
Yeah.
You don't need that. Yeah. So I'm on 50 grams of fat now, for context, and 630 grams of carbohydrates.
And protein stays as sediment. The only thing I would argue towards bodybuilding is people tend to push it up very, very high, and I'm not a massive fan of it. Like,
what I will say is protein increases as carbohydrates increase. So you will get protein in your sourdough, you'll have some trace protein in your rice, your pasta. Your carb source will contain some protein. That's really the only way my protein's increased. So it's increased from 200 grams to 215 grams just off the back of the carbohydrates going higher.
Mm-hmm. Just as a byproduct of having random wee bits here and there, it's completely acceptable.
I'd say a big mistake people make is increasing fats and their logic behind it makes sense to see where they're coming from, but it's like fats are more dense in calories. So it's going to help me with my gaining phase if I'm trying to put on muscle to err slightly higher on on fats, and my calorie increases will come through fats. But the issue with that is fats versus carbohydrates are going to take longer to digest, which can prevent you from eating sooner, which then is actually going to shoot you in the foot. Whereas carbohydrates aren't going to fill you up for as long, so you can have more of them. You can still eat frequently, and you're going to be able to do that with more success, I would argue, than going for a high fat approach.
Yeah, totally agree there. I think one of the things that most people do miss as well when it comes to an actual surplus itself and actually increasing calories, and something that they probably should look into is the actual finer details of the food prior to just increasing food consistently, especially when it comes to like a performance standpoint. Maybe where it isn't just the gym that's being sacrificed in terms of performance, but also our sleep is starting to dwindle. You're starting to feel really tired and lethargic throughout the day. It might not be the case that the surplus and that phase is actually finished. It might be the case that the types of foods that you're using are too slow to digest, that they are things that are ultra processed. It could also be, like you said there, maybe fats are a wee bit too high, and maybe the way we have our fats placed. Let's say you have your biggest carbohydrate meal of the day, and you've got your largest amount of fats that go alongside that there. It's going to instantly slow down digestion overall, which is going to leave us in a position where digestion isn't going to be as good, because by the time we get to our next meal, especially if we don't have a long enough period, we're going to feel like we're almost bunged up, and that increase of carbohydrates is just going to make you feel tired and sluggish. So the idea is that you always want to have a good amount of carbohydrates, as much as you can possibly handle without it causing any sort of issues. You also want it cleared from the system before the next one. I think this is where we start looking at the nuances and the really interesting details of like why people use blood sugar monitors, why people are putting in different types of expenditure in between those meals as well, to try and get them to digest over trying to actually create a bigger deficit. It's not always about it's not always going to be as black and white as we always see it in terms of like increased food, get more muscle. There is these finer details of things that you're not actually looking at. Like, it could be the case as well that you're eating so much food that you're actually not even thinking about hydration. Hydration is also a massive factor. If we've got more food in, do we need to be taking in more water, more salt? Is everything in the body actually functioning the way it should, or are we just forcing in more and more food for the fact of saying we are on 5,000 calories per day? Great job, mate. Your digestive system's fucked. You haven't shit properly in 3 weeks, and your sleep's out the door. Like, unreal. You're doing well, buddy. And again, your cardio's fucking terrible. You're not performing in the gym, and you sound like a fucking French bulldog.
I do sound like a bit of a French bulldog at the minute, but that's only because I'm bunged up, not because I've taken it too far with the surplus.
I
Just a
promise,
disclosure there. But I agree. I agree with you. 100%, mate. I think off the back of what you were saying, probably another point to make is you don't need. Well, we probably did make it, but you don't need that much protein. Like, if you're given a sort of rule of thumb as to how much protein you need, the go to is a gram per pound of body weight. I do like to go slightly higher than that, just to make sure that you're getting in enough protein through complete sources. So I will go like 1.1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. That's how I'll usually set protein.
But
And
these
then,
are not to butt in on this or too fast, but just to add to it really quickly, like, these are the nuances I'm talking about. Like, people are taking these like researches or these rules of thumb and not taking them, not actually looking into them properly. You talked about it right there. It's like you're looking at a pound of protein per body fat, or per body weight, sorry, but like you're looking at it from whole sources. So you want all from whole sources, and then whatever's on top of that is just trace. So you're taking into account that all the protein that they're going to get in their diet isn't actually whole protein. It's going to be beneficial to them, and I think that's where people really do lose it. They're like, my protein's on 250 grams. It's like, why? Because you're getting it off the back of random shit. We don't, especially in a surplus, we don't actually need as much protein. Would you agree with that? Like, the body the body doesn't really need as much. It has more than enough fucking fuel to go off of, and all we need is enough to actually help repair and recover.
Yeah, you've enough food, enough fuel going in that should allow you to train and recover properly. Protein's probably useful, more useful in a diet phase to hold on to that muscle tissue. Um, but yeah,
That's why you see it
you
increased.
yeah, slight increase in protein. There can be definitely a merit in that in a diet phase, I suppose, or at least not seeing it come down too much anyway.
Have you ever played with the idea of actually trading out protein for carbohydrates to see performance increased?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do that anymore either. Like a lot
yeah,
of people
yeah,
just start like fucking increasing the protein in a high amount, especially both on both sides of it. Like especially in a diet phase, pull out some of that protein and stick in some more carbohydrates. Watch that person
yeah.
actually come to life again.
I've done it. I've done it in diet phases as well. So it's like, of course, the rule of thumb keep the protein relatively stable, but if you have like decent bit over a gram per pound of body weight, you have room to still like decrease it and still be getting enough protein in. And if you decrease it and increase the carbohydrates, and you start to see you have a bit more energy, you enjoy your food a bit more, you train a bit better. Happy days.
I love that, man. I feel like a wizard when that happens. Like we're not going to change your calories at all, but we're actually just going to change the dial a wee bit, and you just tweak it, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's just came. Like one, their physique looks a lot better too for it because like carbohydrates are starting to fill the muscles, making the muscle look a bit more fuller. And yes, it probably slows down the overall deficit in the long term a tiny bit, but I think it's more for the small amount of carbs you put in and the result that we get on the back end out there for performance is actually going to create a bigger deficit in the long run, and they're also going to be performing better. And again, we're in the business of performance, and people need to realize that we're not in the business of fucking burying people. But anyhow, I think that sort of takes us into our next sort of point, which is just nutrition in general. So of course we've sort of covered like the extra food and stuff like that there, but you know, what do you think on the front of food quality versus if it fits your macros? Like, where are we there?
We
Especially
covered
when the
that.
calories are that high.
Like we've definitely like alluded to that food quality is going to dictate the success of your gaining phase. Just keeping the food quality as high as you possibly can so that you're able to utilize, digest the food, and perform your best. Like at the end of the day, you have to remember the surplus is there to fuel your training performance. It is fuel. You're not being fueled off protein bars, a load of bagels, a load of ultra processed foods, a load of sweets, whatever else, cereals. Like you're being fueled by putting good quality nutrition into you, and that's going to allow you to train your best, recover your best, and also stay in a good spot body composition wise as well. To the point where you're not feeling stuffed, feeling bloated, and just getting fat. So for me, it's like absolutely essential to keep food quality high, and if you don't, you're not going to have a pretty productive gaining phase.
Something I see you do so well, Emmett, and it's something that people don't talk about enough. I don't think they do anyway. Especially as they do start to move into a gaining phase from, let's say, a deficit or a maintenance phase. Again, they're not really playing with the dials well enough. So instead of just increasing food, something I see you do very well is a wee thing called food volume. I've seen you adjust that very often in terms of picking denser calorie foods instead of having large amounts of, I don't know, what is your go-to deficit food? You know what I mean? Large amounts of like rice cakes, large amounts of whatever. You're
Let's take
using
an
your
example, right?
right.
Let's use an example. So, say your pre-workout meal is cream of rice, whey protein, a load of mixed berries,
Mm-hmm.
honey, a little bit of dark chocolate. Perfect.
Smash.
Right? You go into the gaining phase. You maybe pull them berries out and put some dates in, some dried fruit, more dense in calories, more dense in carbs. less volume in your stomach. Ideal pre-workout as well. Let's say post-workout. Well, if it's chicken and rice is what it is for me. Um, add a little bit of fruit in there. Add a little bit of
Honey.
pineapple. Add a little bit of honey. I do have a little bit of olive oil in there as well. Some dietary fats I think post workout, is fine. And then say my other meals I have potatoes in there. I'll quickly sub out the potatoes after a while for rice.
I'm
Um,
gonna quickly, sorry, I'm gonna quickly mark this point. I need to go to the toilet. I'm not fucking. I'll hold this one out.
well,
Wait there, let's run it back because you were on a fucking roller and I feel like I interrupted it. So, Amit, something I see you do very well is that you quite often trade off the volume of your food. Why do you do this? And how do you do it?
so pretty much food volume in a gaining phase, you can get away with having a little bit less than in a diet phase when you're eating a bit more calories. The volume of food is going to be overall in your stomach going to be higher anyway. So there's a few trade-offs you can make to reduce that food volume and keep appetite in a good spot. So let's use an example of you have a pre-workout meal, cream of rice, or let's say your pre-workout meal might be oats, whey protein, dark chocolate, and some berries and some honey. You might swap out the berries, high food volume, for some dates, some dried fruit, bit more dense, some dried fruit, bit more dense in calories, and that's gonna hit the spot. You're still gonna be getting some carbohydrates in there, and then you might swap out your potatoes for some rice, which is gonna digest a bit easier, um, digest a bit quicker as well, and allow you to eat more frequently. Um, and then maybe you have had a lot of vegetables in, you can maybe slightly reduce vegetables. You can maybe make sure you're still getting a load of micronutrients in, and you can pair fruit alongside every single meal essentially. Fruit can also aid the digestion of your meal, which helps. You're getting micronutrients in. Your food's going to taste better, so that's one I like going with. And then like adding things like honey, and jams to meals, when calories are increasing. There's an easy way to add calories without adding food volume, and it's going to help you keep appetite in a good spot. And then again, it's going to prevent the bottleneck. Hopefully, that is the main thing that can prevent your gaining phase, which is your appetite hitting the brick wall.
Do you think supplements like the likes of like Digest Max and green spreaders, red spreaders, whatever you want to call them, like all these sort of supplements that are based around digestion and not actually getting enough macronutrients in, were actually meant for a gaining phase whenever you were trying to increase as much food as possible, but say the trade-off of eating 120 grams of vegetables was too much volume for the stomach, so it was much easier to take something like that. Of course, it's never going to be as good as eating the real thing, the real McCoy. But a lot of people use these here whenever they're just like in a position where they just dislike eating certain types of vegetables, etc. Like I see those as way more efficient in an actual gaining phase than I would ever see them as efficient in a deficit, because in a deficit you should be probably hungry enough that you'd eat anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't really used them myself in terms of greens powder, but if you get a decent one, and it helps you get some micronutrients in, and helps keep you hungry. Not really opposed to it. I have used Digest Max. The thing with those things that contain like probiotics and stuff, if your digestion isn't good, if your food quality isn't high, like they're not gonna, that's not gonna plug the issue. Like the issue is your food quality, that you need to address, or something that you're having in your diet plan that just doesn't digest well with you. So find out, like, address the actual food itself before starting to plug in things like Digest Max, hoping that it's gonna fix your digestion. It's like these things can help, but if your digestion is already an issue, it can also act as even more of a hindrance.
Yeah, big time. I think this is something you already covered as well, just to swiftly move on. But the appetite problem that most people have of, like, whenever they're genuinely struggling to eat enough. You sort of hit the nail on the head with food volume. Like, this is what you actually do. You find more dense foods and increase your calories through pulling out things that are just, there's junk volume within diet as well, not just within training. Things that you've just got in there for no reason, and things that are just filling your stomach that could be otherwise filled with something else.
I think an important distinction to make with the density of the foods, dense carbohydrate sources as opposed to fat sources that are more dense in calories, is the smarter play, in my opinion.
I agree.
But mate, you know what? You can make all of these changes, food volume, have the most optimal nutritional setup, but it all comes back to if you're not eating these meals frequently enough throughout the day. There's only a certain amount of times you have throughout the day that you can eat your meals. If you're missing meals and your routine and your day isn't set up and structured in a way that allows you to eat, like say 4 or 5 meals a day, you're gonna struggle regardless of what you're eating.
Oh, yeah, big time. To sort of throw it back to one of the prime examples is Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler used to wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, eat a meal, and then go back to bed. That's the extremes that you hear people going to try and get their meals in, because it can be quite hard on the digestive tract to just force more and more food down.
See, I wake up at 4, eat a meal, and don't go to bed. So that, I think that's been almost like a blessing for me. The fact that I'm starting my food so early, and that helped me stay quite hungry as well. And then because I'm cutting that last meal off relatively early, relative to bedtime as well, like 3 hours prior. Morning comes, appetite's firing again, I'm hungry, and then you can rinse and repeat, and keep that going. Get into a good swing of it for as long as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. I do think there's so much to be gained to actually just have a longer day in general, and I've said that for a very long time to people, and they just still don't understand it. But whenever you've got, like, I have a period there in the morning where I'm up at 5 a.m. and I've had a wee bit of food, and it wasn't even much. It was like literally just on the go there. It was 2 bananas and a protein shake, but like that started the day off where it's numbers that I don't need to crunch by the back end of the day. And I don't know about you, but I actually do like going to bed on a bit more of like an empty, quote unquote, stomach. I feel like I sleep a wee bit better. Whenever I'm going to bed absolutely full to the brim, I don't really sleep too well. So I like being able to get the food in at the very start of the day, and then towards the back end, that is whenever I like to sort of like taper off and have lower amounts, lower volumes of food as well.
I actually think that's one of the things that I've changed the most since I really got into this sort of the journey of physique development. Was at the start I thought it was an absolute cheat code, holding back your first meal as long as you possibly can so that you can have a lot more food in the evening when you are typically more hungry. But exactly what you said there, when you cut off that meal a bit sooner, to like a bit late, a bit earlier, and you sleep better, everything's just better then from that point. So I'm a massive advocate in getting your meals, especially in a surplus, maybe different in a deficit, but getting your meals in early, and having a decent window prior to bedtime where you're not eating. So 2 to 3 hours, ideal.
Yeah, and also something that people probably stay away from, because I just think a lot of these words around food are demonized, but if your fasted window is longer, you will be hungrier for that first meal. So if you can finish up food a wee bit earlier, then you're going to be in a position where you start the day well. And again, that domino effect of good sleep, waking up hungry, you're on to a winner, especially in a surplus.
Yep.
So I guess to sort of finish this sort of section up is we've touched on the mindset, we've touched on the surplus itself, the nutrition, the training is probably the one that we haven't touched on just yet. So again, I think that another thing, I know that people get this backwards. They think that pushing in more food equals me getting better performance, but again, it's the byproduct. Whenever you perform well, you get rewarded with more food because your body is doing more. Understand that, you know,
And because
you don't you don't just
and
stick
because you've got more
more
muscle.
fuel in the
Sorry.
car. Sorry, but you don't just stick more fuel in the car expecting it to go faster. It goes faster because of the upgrades that you've put in place.
Yeah. Yeah, you're training in an environment. If you're creating an environment conducive to growth as well, you've got more muscle, so you're going to require more food as well. And I actually noted this myself recently, where my appetite was starting to improve again because it did take a bit of a dip, and with the improvements, potentially because I'm growing and growing muscle, it's a good sign that my training's productive, because my appetite's starting to return to a
Back up
really
again.
good spot. Which, yeah, and that's just because I think I've got a really good run of training recently. Training's been since I've got back. Obviously, takes a bit of adjusting to like being away and being out of routine and stuff. But now, like in good routine, training's flying. I'm starting to get hungrier. I think there's definitely a correlation between the two.
Oh, big time. Especially because, loads of environmental factors there for you as well. Like you've changed gyms and stuff recently, haven't you there? So maybe you've went in with a bit of a newfound love for the gym, where you've got back after a period where everything wasn't set in place. You're straight back in, the food's in line, and then on top of that there, I don't know about you, but whenever I go to a new gym, I feel like I have something to prove. With the people around you, you like fucking yourself and the people around you. Plus, you get to play with some new kit and stuff like that. There, like stimulus is high again, and you just almost reset the logbook, ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's also something that is worth considering. Like that reset in numbers as well, can often be because you're just so stubborn with the numbers that you were using in the gym on certain machines, where it actually warrants just resetting it because execution has got a bit untidy, and sometimes a reset and load can help just tidy up that execution, and allow you to a longer runway to progress on that movement. So yeah, definitely. I definitely think that's helped as well, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
going into all these X-rays are like blank canvases, so I'm not like attached to a certain number that I need to be getting, because it's just like a fresh start there.
Yeah, and again, to look into some more of the like deeper details when it comes to training in general, we start looking at volume and intensity. Start playing with those dials quite interestingly. A lot of the time, it isn't actually going to be the way that people think, where you just be like, okay, well, more food means more activity. Well, what about the case that like more food is also equal in the fact that you're lifting more? Could it be a fact that you actually do need to bring down overall volume of your training because the intensity is just set at a much higher amount? And to put this into perspective, like in my off season, say I'm getting in and deadlifting, or my not my off season. Yeah, let's go off season. Sorry, say that I am in a position where I'm in a surplus. Say I'm getting in deadlifting and I'm in the upper end of my deadlifts, which like 230 for some reps. Phenomenal weight, right? But it's also taking me so much more to actually do that in terms of the food output, but also like from the central nervous system standpoint. My recovery from that there probably isn't going to be great. Whereas if I'm on the lighter side of things, I don't have as much food to play with. I start thinking about, okay, well, like, could I like maybe either switch this here movement out for a different type of hinge that's going to have less load, and maybe I can hit it more frequently. And is the barbell deadlift being something that's like causing a bit too much and for me to actually recover from? And the fact that I was in surplus, I could actually recover from it much better in the gaining phase, because of the intensity I was able to bring, the output I was able to give, and still stay in a position to where I was recovering well enough from it. So we start playing with those things like that there: exercise selection, volume, and intensity.
Yeah, and I also think it's almost like an inverted U curve relationship between volume and intensity. Like the higher your intensity is, to at a certain point, you'll find your volume will have to come down. And if you're not yet there with regards to intensity, they may need a bit more volume in terms of, when I'm describing volume, I'm describing the amount of hard sets you're performing. So the lower your intensity is, the higher your volume maybe needs to be. once your intensity gets up to a point where it's quite high, you start to taper that volume down slightly. And that's why you see guys that are heavily muscled who are performing two, sometimes even one set for a certain exercise, because their intensity is so high. But not only are they, when I mean intensity, they're not just training hard as they possibly can. They're training with accuracy, and like that intensity is going towards the target muscle. And that's why they can warrant having a lower volume approach, but you need to earn that as well.
Yeah, well, one thing I would definitely argue against that there, maybe bring to light, is it's not always just the Olympia standard athletes. Sometimes it's looking at what's actually happening in your day to day life and your environment around you, how much stress you're actually taking on, and how little the board and that central nervous system is too. You know, get into the gym after a very long, hard day on your emotions, on your mind, on your body, and burying yourself probably isn't the best thing possible. So looking at our overall volume of life as well. Oh, it sounds really hippy dippy and holistic, but it's actually true. Like, our body is going to take a hit from our day to day activities too. Like yourself, Emmett, like, you know, to use the example of cardio, right now you don't have cardio in, and it's mainly because your steps are so high because of your day to day life. It would be pointless for you to have 20 minutes of cardio on the Stairmaster or elliptical or the bike there for no good fucking reason. You know, we start looking at what is the minimal effective dose here.
Yeah, and like just gain, like expand on volume. I don't know what your opinion or your approach is to this, but there is a correlation between volume and hypertrophy. So if you can perform as many hard sets as possible, that you can recover from for as long as possible, that's going to be in your best interest. So playing around with actually increasing the amount of sets that you're doing when your recovery capacity is greater in a calorie surplus, which it should be. I think there's definitely merit in that as well. But as we've alluded to, sort of the U curve, it is only that up to a point. There will be a point of diminishing returns. But again, don't be afraid to find out where that point lies. You'll never find out unless you push the boat a bit out.
Yeah, we're not made of chocolate.
Yeah, you can, like, what I'm thinking of is most people can get away with performing more sets. Like, is it the fact that are you performing two sets because you're training with pinpoint accuracy and intensity, or because you want to get out of the gym sooner?
Yeah, which I think both have their place. You know, depending on who you are and what you're actually looking for. We're probably generically talking to the people that have a future in bodybuilding or want to explore that. You know, so if your goal is as much muscle mass as possible, then you know you are going to make the most of it out there. If you're somebody that just enjoys the gym and wants to gain a bit more muscle, but wants to have that nice, like, quote unquote balance where you are in the gym, maybe it's a case looking at it a wee bit more backwards instead of thinking, okay, I need to stay in here and need to do 3 working sets on everything. Like, are you just having junk volume in there for no reason? And could you be bringing so much more energy and intensity to the actual set?
Yeah, but I think definitely when your schedule doesn't allow for too much time, just make sure your sets are very accurate, and you learn how to train hard, and you'll be fine as well. Like, there's ways around it too. You can use intensity techniques that allow you to be a bit more time efficient in the gym too.
Big time. And
But
also,
that's
I think one of the big things well, the big thing I was trying to say there as well, prior with the deadlift, is like, you know, start picking your exercises better. Like, I remember in one of my push-up phases, like, I had a deadlift day that was more taxing taking off and on plates than it was actually doing the session.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's
I could have picked something that was a lot more stimulating as a hinge, but it was fun and I enjoyed it.
yeah, it's about finding that balance too, isn't it, between enjoyment and
Time
per,
and efficiency
yeah,
and
yeah,
overall
100%.
recovery. Um, yeah. Paying the tax back. It's probably our last wee bit here. So, you know, the fat that you have gained, what is that going to look like whenever you cut, and how much fat do you actually need to pull off? Well, again, folks, unfortunately, there's no fucking set answer for this, because, like, like we don't know the situation. You don't know how much fat you've actually gained. And don't get me wrong. Let's say you started off at, well, Emma, like what was your last body weight there for that photo shoot?
Quite light, 68 kilos or something.
68 kilos. Okay, so just over a year and a half of a bit of a push-up phase, hopefully by the end of all this, or a year, let's say, of a permanent push-up phase. Are you gonna be 68 kilo again?
Potentially.
Because you're gonna be cutting more to get more condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be I'm going to be a far, far, far superior 68 kilos.
Okay. So what weight
With
are
a-
you right now?
Probably not as heavy as you think based on the length of time in the surplus, but this comes back to what we've been
95?
saying.
86?
Is that what you're guessing? Really?
No, no. You're 85.
Nah, not even. I'm 78.
Oh wait, sorry. Fuck. I was supposed to say 75. My bad.
So
Fucked
I've
up.
gained 10 kilos.
Okay, so we could assume that like you've got 10 kilo to put off, but we're hoping that you don't.
Yeah.
So that's your answer. Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that. It's like, what was your last cut? Were you in good condition? Are you trying to get more condition? Yeah. Okay, we'll assume that you've built muscle. You'll probably end up back down to the same weight. We'd probably hope that, you do it well enough that you're actually sitting in the 70s. That would be really impressive. A nice wee 2 kilo up, better condition.
Would be nice.
Would be nice. Would be really nice. And it also depends what you're looking at whenever it comes to deficit as well, and what condition you actually want to be in. Are you stage lean? Are you photo shoot lean? Are you going to Ibiza with a boys lean? You know what I mean? Like what needs to... Sorry, I'm disappearing here. What needs to actually come in? The upper half for you, I would say for most people, comes in fairly fast. But, do you need to be as lean as having glute striations going to Ibiza with the boys? If you do, maybe you need to start questioning what you're doing with the boys in Ibiza. Fuck's my water. Oh, don't matter. Fine.
I think as well, mate. If you do it right as well, every time you do begin to diet down, pay the tax back, it gets that little bit not easier but more manageable.
Yeah, no, I would definitely use the word easier. I'm with you on that. Your calories should be higher. You should be able to do a wee bit less in terms of the overall volume of cardio and actually training, etc. Everything should get easier.
Yeah, the more productive your gaining phase was, the more you kept everything like your structure and stuff in place, then the easier as well your diet phase will be. It's only when you have so much to change in terms of your lifestyle and the structure of your day that the diet is really like a slog because there's just so much change there. But for me, it'll literally the only change really will be less food.
Emmett, to finish this up, what advice would you give to somebody that is starting their gaining phase next week?
Take your time, play the long game. Use training performance as your measure of progression. You want to be facilitating your training performance. I think care a bit less about the body getting softer, the visuals week to week, and use training as your motivation to continue improving, getting stronger, building tissue. Keep food quality really high, and have a level of structure in your day that kind of just alluded to there as well, that wouldn't be too dissimilar from a diet phase. Keep yourself very structured. Keep on top of your meal timings. eat similar stuff day to day. Um, don't have too many off-plan meals. There's definitely merit and maybe a bit more flexibility because you have a bit more food to play with. You can give back a bit more to loved ones, stuff like that. So maybe once a week or something, having a bit of an off-plan meal, but being sensible with the choice of food that you have. Understand the more frequency of these and choices where you're going for like the more dirty pizzas and stuff you have, then the more fat you're just going to gain, and the shorter your gain phase is going to be. So you want to stay in the growth phase for as long as you possibly can, um, to build as much muscle as possible. That would be my main advice, and enjoy it because it's an enjoyable phase.
Yeah, there's a fuck less stress on you to actually hit a certain pinpoint, and you can actually
If you
just
love
enjoy it.
training,
Yeah, that's just what to say.
if you love training, like your training's going to be great. Remember, you're just fueling that training performance. Don't take the piss with your surplus. Like you know, I do prefer a bit of a more conservative approach there. Um, don't get too bogged down with your exact rate of gain. Don't get too disheartened and pull back as soon as you see yourself getting a bit softer. Understand that it is part of it, and you can always take fat off, but building the
Always
muscle
gain muscle. Yeah.
can always, yeah. So no,
So
yeah, that's it.
to finish it up for the day, I believe we do have a fucking lay. What was it in
It's on
English
you
again?
again. Growing,
Growing. Egg was. Growing. Our fucking lay for the day is egg was.
mate. You're leafy. You're fluent now. You're gonna do every fucking life from now on.
I hope to.
Will
I hope
you?
to. I do want to get better. Brother, have a beautiful night's sleep.
I will do, mate. And I'm just gonna say apologies to everyone who's listened to a very nasally version of myself. I'm gonna have to get some antihistamines into me, and rest up. I hope it's still I hope there was some value provided there, that made the listen worthwhile.
Big time. Slang go for you, Lammet. Have a beautiful night.
Slant slant. Have a good one, mate.